welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. A couple of interesting things to talk about this week. Certainly things are still happening inside Microsoft, which is good to see. So let's kick off with the first of those, and that is an update to Visual Studio Code. And specifically for the Teams Toolkit. The Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code has had their August 2024 update. So there's a blog post talking about that. Some interesting things in there to go through, actually. The first of which is that some of the app validation stuff that would normally be in the Teams Dev Center, that kind of like dev.teams.microsoft.com space, that used to be previously in its own app in the Teams App Store for Teams apps. And then, went to that website. More and more, actually, that functionality appears to be coming into Teams Toolkit, which is quite a good place for it. I think almost a natural fit for it. Kind of better than that website, I think. That website always felt a bit like, I don't know, it never really seemed to gel very well. I was never very happy with it coming from an app into a website. That felt like a step backwards. Moving it into Teams Toolkit actually makes a lot of sense. Now, that's not what they're saying here, but what they are doing as part of this update is bringing some of the functionality, the key functionality that people actually use that thing for, which is app validation. So being able to do that inside the Teams Toolkit is nice. Maybe this is more of a play to eventually replace that website and just have it all in the Teams Toolkit. And I'm kind of behind that. I think that's a good idea. So that's definitely one to watch. But for now, you can get a lot of that app validation stuff that you need to do. You can now get it done in Teams Toolkit, which is cool. If you use Python, there's some cool stuff for you. This is interesting. So now built into the Teams Toolkit is the ability to build declarative copilots with Teams Toolkit. You can't actually use declarative copilots today. They're still in private preview. This is a classic kind of Microsoft organizational thing. Remember, Microsoft is built into lots of different teams and they've all got their own kind of projects and products to be working on. So one of the things that needs to happen is that Teams Toolkit needs to support declarative copilots. And it sounds like that team have done that and they now put it into the product. But it is not necessarily the case. I think declarative copilots, as I record this, certainly are still in private preview. So whilst you can build it through the Teams Toolkit, you can't actually deploy it anywhere unless you're in that private preview. We'll get there. That's just one of those interesting timing things that happens. So we'll keep an eye on that. It is interesting because it gives me hope that the declarative copilot stuff will come out of private preview really quite soon. Feels like maybe this team, the Teams Toolkit team, were hitting some dates that they'd agreed to get it into the toolkit for. And so maybe this stuff is coming. Again, I don't know any of that stuff. It's just piecing the puzzles, the puzzle pieces together and just trying to think forward a little bit. That stuff was announced at Build, and I know it's not a hard and fast rule, but I don't think Microsoft like to announce stuff at Build and then have it not available for ages and ages and ages. So if they're talking about new developer functionality, normally you'd like to see it out within kind of 3 to 4 months of it being talked about. So we'll see how that goes. And there's some other stuff as well for Teams Toolkit. So go take a look at that blog post because there are some cool things in there. Moving over slightly to Visual Studio, like big Visual Studio. There's a updated Copilot content release, I suppose, the Visual Studio extension for doing completions, for doing GitHub Copilot completions in Visual Studio. And the big thing here that's new and interesting is exclusions. I hadn't even thought about this. This is probably like a big enterprise kind of problem. But it might well be that there is some parts of your code base that you don't want Copilot to use when looking at completions and looking at training and stuff like that. So you can now exclude content. You can now do that with project file paths and stuff. So this is cool. There's a how-to on how to do it. Go through here and what you can do. I think this is cool. It's interesting for sure. It's definitely a big company problem. It's not something I ever thought about before, but I don't know. I guess it's a thing people need to be able to do. And again, it's a good reminder that everybody is different and Microsoft in some ways have to cater for everybody. And so you see features like this that is taking, valuable engineering time, but it's needed by somebody. So just because it's not needed by you, sometimes it's kind of fashionable to beat up Microsoft for being very slow to iterate and fix and stuff like that. But the reality is there's lots of there's lots of people with lots of different requirements, and this is one of them that I would not even have thought of. The fact that you'd want to exclude particular bits of code or projects from your GitHub for Business or enterprise kind of code base. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. All right. So we talked a lot about Copilot and all the rest of it, and how you can extend Copilot with things like declarative copilots, custom engine copilots. We've been through all of that. And one of the interesting things that's happening right now with Copilot and AI and the way this is happening, and I just touched on this a little bit with the announcement back at Build, is that we've seen a lot of these things talked about, but they're not actually in the hands of developers yet. Now, that's given some parts inside Microsoft, like the documentation team, the marketing team, a bit of a runway actually to do some of the things that often come a little bit later in a product's lifestyle. And those are kind of the supporting documentation, the how-tos, and some of that stuff. And I think that's kind of at play here with an updated page around your extensibility options for Microsoft 365 Copilot. Because this is kind of interesting, because this is a whole page really going through the different extensibility options. It's a really good read, by the way. Different extensibility options, what you should choose when and why. The reason I think this is really interesting is that you can go through these things and you've got these jumping off points, right? To say, yep, okay, you want to extend or you want to build your own, and you can go through these different things and say, fine, blah, 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 blah. But quite a few of these different paths, you'll kind of hit kind of dead ends because they're not ready yet. So for instance, if you jump off to declarative copilots, as I was just talking about, they're still in private preview. So this is a good document. And I don't want to say it isn't, but again, it's the case of like the marketing and documentation team almost being in front of where the actual engineering output is right now. We'll get there. It's just one of those interesting things. Just be aware of. It's a good read. It's a useful read. But just be aware that not everything talked about there is something you can pick up and build solutions with today. Talking of AI, it's interesting. So Microsoft are kicking off another round of the Microsoft AI Tour. It's interesting to see how this has evolved, this idea of Microsoft going city to city with regional tours. We had something way back when called Future Decoded. We had the Microsoft Ignite Tour, and now we have the Microsoft AI Tour. I think it's a similar kind of thing. Obviously, the AI Tour is going to be very themed on AI, but the reality is that everything Microsoft is talking about at the moment is very themed on AI. So this kind of replaces the Ignite Tour series. The general gist is it's coming to a city near you. Microsoft will fly out a bunch of Microsoft speakers. They will also use regional, their regional talent, if you like, to present content. It's free. If you can get there, it's good. There'll be networking. There'll be sessions. It's worth attending if you can get there. There's a website. It's got a list of dates and locations. Here we go. So it is all over the world. It starts around the end of September in Mexico City, and it goes all the way through to the end of March, in Tokyo. A lot of this is coming soon information. I don't know if you can. Yeah, you can request to attend the first three, which are happening in September. So if they're happening in a city near you or a city you'd quite like to go to, then go ahead and request to attend. I don't know anything about how busy they're going to be. I don't know how many spaces they've got. I don't know anything about it other than what's on that website. So go check out that website. All right, I think that's everything from me. Another busy week to come. I'm sure we are waiting to hear about some of those announcements from Build and hoping that they drop soon. In the meantime, whatever it is you're doing, I hope you have a great week, and I will speak to you again next time.